podcast. Today we sit down with Nash Hoover, who is a young cryptozoologist up and coming who runs a web series called Chasing Legends. Chasing Legends is very reminiscent of classic cryptozoology TV shows like Monster Quest and Destination Truth. With such a dynamic idea in mind, it should be interesting to see what makes Hoover tick, why he's doing what he does, and his thoughts on what he's done so far. So, if you want to start off, do you want to talk about who you are? Do you want to talk about Chasing Legends? Just fire away.
All right, well, my name is Nash Hoover. I am the co-creator and host of Chasing Legends, which is a cryptid-centered web series. We travel the globe looking for cryptid creatures and trying to discover new evidence and basically just testing if these legends have any truth to them, really, and gets pretty adventurous and doesn't always go to plan, but yeah.
Now, that's a really interesting point of view, actually, because you mentioned putting these legends to the test, so to speak. And I think that's a really interesting perspective, because I feel, personally, and I'm sure many would agree, that a lot of people in cryptozoology are looking to prove an answer that they believe they already have. What would you say is your main goal in things like cryptozoology or a general mystery?
I guess for us, we go into every case, no matter kind of how our personal feelings of it, we go into every case with complete skepticism. And our mission, I guess I should put it, is basically, prove, I don't think this is real, but prove me wrong.
Interesting.
So we kind of explore every aspect of the case, from cultural aspects, biological aspects, historical accounts. We gather as much information as we physically can gather and find. Kind of sit down as a team, discuss, okay, after, with the information we have, how do you feel about it? And then from there, we kind of narrow in a search area of sighting reports and conduct our own investigation to try and see if we can have our own experiences or see if we can possibly debunk what people potentially could be seeing, or, basically finding whether maybe it could be a case of misidentification, or, it's just mass hysteria. Someone sees something that they couldn't quite explain, but they know, hey, there's a history of sightings of this and this, so that's probably what I saw. We kind of put all that to the test and kind of see if there's alternate explanations, and if we can't find anything, then we kind of we'll take that step. Okay, maybe there could be something different here, something unexplained, and so that's kind of the approach that we take conducting these investigations.
Right. In that sense, would you say you take a very scientific or logical approach?
I'd say both. We definitely, I'd say probably more so on the science side, just kind of how we conduct things, but definitely more so logic, where we really kind of take a step back and we think about everything we think about all the information as we're given it.
To kind of connect what you just said, and it's a bit of a long connection, but bear with me on it. Now, you have, I believe, 3 pilot episodes of Chasing Legends online right now, right?
Yes.
So I was watching them the other day, actually, and I recommend that everyone listening to this watches them as well, because they're good episodes. But there definitely is this really kind of unique factor to them, where in your approach to these things, you're also investigating kind of a wide variety of phenomena in just these 3 episodes. I understand your first one is actually a ghost hunting episode.
Yes.
Would you like to talk about that one?
So our very first ever episode is a ghost hunting episode, and a lot of people are kind of taken aback by that, because I'm like, yes, I get it, we're a cryptid show, and yeah, obviously our first ever episode was a ghost hunt, but at one time we were considering incorporating ghost hunting into the show as long as it met like a certain criteria, but as we kind of moved on, the cryptid side of things kind of interested us more, more so because it wasn't being done a lot in the terms that we felt should be.
Interesting.
Just, there's so many ghost hunting shows out there right now, but there aren't really any cryptid shows anymore. So that's kind of one of the main factors that drove us in that direction. But anyway, we investigated in this place. It's a local place to us here in central Minnesota called Hell's Tunnel. It's probably 150, maybe 200 feet long. It's just a tunnel. Like, there's nothing special about it. It's nothing crazy. The information that we were able to kind of dig up is that it was created back in the 40s or 50s, I believe, as like a bomb shelter for the community. As the war ended, I think there was, I don't know if it was there when it was built as a bomb shelter or if it was built after, but there was a mental asylum built above it, up on top of the hill. And there is evidence that there is some sort of walled off, like, main passage that would lead into where this main building would be. So the information that we were able to find and actually learn from people that worked at this place, that when it was an asylum, now it's a minimum security prison, is that was basically the place back when, like, mental disorders were pretty taboo and weren't quite understood, and they pretty much, if they had the people that they just couldn't deal with, they pretty much locked them away down there. And because there's, like I said, there's this main kind of walled off doorway, but then there's also these walled off, probably, I'd say maybe 6 by 8 little rooms, and there's tons of them on both sides of this. When we were there filming, there were 2 open that we could actually get into, but other trips that we've gone back to that location, everything's been walled up. But, so this episode kind of came up as, this was probably a month or so after we kind of created this idea and of doing Chasing Legends as a show. And we were like, okay, we kind of have a concept. It's a pretty, base concept, but let's kind of take what we have, shoot a test episode. No one will ever see it. We'll just kind of see how it works, and just kind of see if we have a dynamic to make this a show. So we went about everything how we, we're planning on filming every episode of this series. We filmed our car introduction, us talking amongst each other, me introducing the team to the case that we were about to go investigate, showed up at the location, walked through it, and it's pretty much immediately as soon as we walked into literally, it was like as soon as we stepped foot from the dirt path to the concrete of this tunnel, it was just like game on. Like, there was stuff that we weren't hearing with our own ears that after the fact we picked up in the audio while editing, and there was just tons of crazy stuff happening. It was just pretty much all a build-up to towards the end of the episode where I came face-to-face with what I believe to be probably an 8-foot-tall shadow figure. Scared the hell out of all of us, especially my cousin, who I saw saw this standing behind, as she had tears rolling down her eyes and didn't remember any of that night at all, and didn't know why she was crying, didn't understand it. Something affected her pretty drastically there. And I saw this shadow kind of standing behind her, because I had my headlamp. She's about a foot shorter than I am, so I turned around with my headlamp. I could see where her shadow was. I'm looking down at her, and behind her was this, tall shadow figure that was darker than the actual darkness. I watched it I pretty much locked, eyes with it, and probably a couple seconds went by and it vanished. And then shortly after that, our camera battery died, so that was kind of like the end of our investigating. But as we kind of went through and we got back and we started cutting the footage together, we realized that we actually have stuff here. Like, we have stuff. So we ended up putting it out. And that ended up being our very first ever episode.
And what episode that must have been? I can't imagine. I said, what an episode that must have been. I can't imagine.
Oh, yeah, it was, yeah. We still to this day, cannot believe. Because, I remember after we had edited the episode, I put it on a DVD and we put it into my TV here at home. And I have my surround sound system in my living room and we were watching it. And that's kind of when we started hearing all of these other things because we had, this 360 sound system. And so we're sitting here and we're walking in and all of a sudden all these sounds are amplified and we're like, we didn't hear that, we didn't catch that before. So it was the amount of evidence that we ended up capturing was just phenomenal for what it was supposed to be.
Sounds absolutely phenomenal. Did you happen to catch any video recording of this shadow figure that you had witnessed?
We only had one camera at the time, and like I said, we were all very new to this. The guy that I had acting as cameraman, he was kind of new to that role, and he turned himself but didn't turn the camera. So we unfortunately did not have footage of said figure, unfortunately.
Now, even though this is obviously a cryptozoology podcast, I think it's very important to understand the groundwork for something like this, and for something unexplained like this to have happened in general, I think is of interest to any subject in science. Considering that this is the experience that, at the very least, you're all convinced that you've had, what made you turn away from ghost hunting after that?
I don't think it was any one specific thing that turned us away. I think it was because like I said, we pretty much agreed that we would do ghost hunting as long as it fit a certain criteria. And I think we kind of realized that the criteria we had set was so specific that it was going to be almost difficult to do that at the level we were at the time. I see, right. It would have been too impossible to find those cases that we could do. Now that Hell's Son episode kind of fit into that criteria where it wasn't, your 4 walls in a room haunted house. It was, there was a hike involved. There was, it was in a pretty remote area. That was kind of our criteria. But I think, that was kind of what the cryptid side of it just eventually won over our desires for what we wanted this show to be.
So, considering that you all kind of have this uniting desire to get involved with cryptozoology, especially to the extent that Chasing Legends wants to go to, how did you all find each other in this subject?
Well, our team as of now consists of myself, my cousin Michaela, who has been on the team since day one, who was in that original episode. And then my friend Sammy Vernay, who is our director of photography, and my friend Brian Burninghouse, who is our second camera operator. Both Sammy and Brian, Sammy came into this with our Devil's Punch Bowl episode about 2 years ago. That was his first. Originally, he was just brought on to shoot that, but I loved his tenacity for getting the shot, and he just was, very dedicated to everything, and he fell in love with just the show in general and in the type of project. So he stayed on indefinitely. Brian came on within the last few months. Our original team was myself, Michaela, my best friend Patrick, who I had been doing, was doing ghost hunting with prior to doing the show, and then my friend JC Yetzer, who came on to do the camera work and then eventually did our audio work, but is no longer on the show. Those were the 4 members that stayed with it for quite a few years up until this last year. So I think basically the show was created by myself and another friend, Caitlin Keeley, and basically we wanted people that, we obviously didn't have any budget, we didn't have any money, so we kind of got what we were given. And I had these friends. I'm like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Do you have any interest in helping out? And they were all, totally on board. They just, they really loved the experience. We all enjoyed hanging out together, so we knew we had a good dynamic together. So that's kind of how that team kind of became what it was. So it was more based on necessity than actually finding a team. I knew all these people were kind of interested in this stuff, which also helped. But yeah, it was more of, just kind of asking your friends, the typical kind of indie filmmaker approach.
Right.
But it worked out very well, and I am very honored and happy that I had those people alongside me.
It sounds like, despite the fact that it was done out of necessity, you have a great groundwork for a team being built there.
Oh, for sure. Especially now, since my cousin Michaela is still a part of it, me and her have a great on-camera presence, and, we're just, obviously, because we're related, we've known each other our whole lives, we kind of know how to, go off each other, play off each other's weaknesses and strengths, and we investigate very well together, me and Michaela.
And speaking of those investigations, you mentioned the Devil's Punch Bowl episode. And when I was watching the Devil's Punch Bowl episode, that's what kind of interested me the most, I think, in a wider context, because I had realized that all 3 pilot episodes seemed to cover one of the 3 big realms of unexplained phenomena, respectively. Because you had your first episode with ghost hunting, and your second episode, which was the Lake Pepin monster, was entirely cryptozoological. But then you have your third episode, this one, which is very sort of generally Fortean.
Yeah.
What was your experience with the Lake Pepin monster?
So that one was one that I came across by accident. This was back when we were, within like the first few months of the inception of Chasing Legends. Mm-hmm. And so I was just doing some, pretty vague research, just kind of, Googling, okay, what lake monsters are in the U.S., whatever. And I came across a Wikipedia list of lake monsters all over the world. So I'm like, okay, let's see what's on here. Some of them I had heard of. And then I came across this one. I'm like, Lake Pepin in Minnesota? Like, who knew? So I ended up Googling, so I did some more deeper research, found out it's sightings going back to the late 1800s, possibly earlier than that. And I'm like, okay, it's an hour away. Like, I'm going to make a trip out there. So my other cousin and I happened to, we just drove out there. I walked around, met some of the townspeople, and they all were like, yes, this is seen here. This, we have this, in our town culture, in the area's culture. And it was still another year after that until we filmed this episode. But we went out there really with no expectations. We just, we 4 friends jumped in the car. Okay, let's go see if we can find a lake monster. And we filmed all the car stuff of us talking. We were doing research pretty much as we were driving. Sharing the information that we had, kind of sharing personal thoughts about it. Got into the town, got on the boat with Larry Nielsen, who is the boat captain of the Pearl of the Lake, which is like an authentic, like 1800s steam paddle boat that tours the lake, and who has actually had a personal experience of his own, which he talked about in the episode. We also had our Star Tribune, which is like the statewide newspaper, was there doing a story on us. Not us specifically, but they were doing a story on the Lake Pepin story in general, and they just happened to be there the day that we were there. So they got in contact with us and did an interview with us, and followed us, were actually, kind of with us for the first part of our investigation, and were actually with us when we had our sighting, which threw us all off completely. Because, we're out on this boat, it's pretty overcast, there was barely anybody on the lake, and I believe it was Michaela, I think Michaela and I spotted it kind of simultaneously, but we didn't, this kind of goes back to me saying, we're really great together, we kind of understand, we kind of have a sixth sense with each other, because we simultaneously saw something, but we didn't disclose it to each other. We both kind of reacted at the same time. I had binoculars, she saw it with her naked eye, and so that's just how clear it was. It was this huge wake against the current, was moving. We managed to get it on camera. The Star Tribune people saw it, and we watched it for a minute or two, and then it just completely disappeared.
Was there anything that was present along with this wake, or was it just this kind of anomalous wake?
It was just that anomalous wake. It was, your pretty traditional, lake sighting, or lake creature sighting. There was no, no humps, no visible creature. It was just, we chopped it up in the episode as an unusual wake pattern, or wave pattern.
Right.
We never actually gave it the monster title, but it was something odd.
Now, was that something you had given it in service of the episode solely, or do you think that's actually kind of your approach to this, which is that your approach to be we have to assume this is the most likely thing, or?
Yeah, because we kind of, all four of us after we had seen it, we all kind of we bounced back and forth with each other, okay, what could it be? What could we be seeing? And we really couldn't come up with anything that made sense. Like I said, we didn't want to give it that monster title. We just saw, a plesiosaur swimming in the water. But we didn't know what to call it, because nothing about it made sense. Mm-hmm. Because like I said, it just appeared, was there, moving against the current, disappeared. And it actually went in line with the sighting that Larry had, which was something very similar, where he said he saw it against the current, moving, disappeared.
Mm. And that's interesting, because that shouldn't necessarily be moving against the current.
Right.
That's a pretty, plain and simple fact there. But of course, you deal a lot with anomalies of all kinds in that case.
Yeah.
And speaking of anomalies of all kinds, your third pilot episode, which is the Devil's Punch Bowl, that one was a very interesting one, because you found yourself dealing with the idea of gnomes.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about gnomes a bit?
So the Devil's Punch Bowl was one that we had kind of had on our back burner for a long time. We knew about it. We had all kind of researched it. We kind of knew the approach that we would take with it, but it was kind of never one that we were sure if we ever wanted to do, because it was just so far-fetched. It's this, this deep, geographic rock, limestone bowl in a river waterfall in the middle of the woods in western Wisconsin, and it's supposed to have gnomes running around it. It was just everything about it just was the strangest thing, and we almost at some point didn't even want to touch it, because we're like, this is too out there for even us. And as time, what's that? Sorry.
No, continue, please.
But as time went by, we went on a 2-year hiatus, or we weren't working on anything. I was still researching and occasionally speaking, but we weren't filming anything. So when we kind of got back together and we're like, okay, let's start working again, let's start filming, that was kind of the one we were like, this one's probably going to be the easiest one to get back into the swing of things, since we haven't done this in so long. So we brought on Sammy Vernay to do the camera work. Everyone showed up. We're like, okay, let's drive out there. 5 of us went out. I reached out to a guy that I knew, Chris Weiner, who knew about it. We're like, okay, we're going to interview you. Just meet us. We shot all of our opening stuff, the usual jazz that we were accustomed to. The GoPro car shot of me, introducing the case of the team. We got into the town of Menominee, walked around, shot all that. It was great. It was like 98 degrees with 100% humidity. We felt like we were in Bermuda. We, walked around the town, got all that, did our interview, and then we went out to the investigation site, and we were not prepared for what we were walking into. Mm-hmm. In all of our minds, because everybody looked into it individually, they all looked at pictures, they all did research. We got there, oh shit, this place is bigger than we thought. Mm. So we walked down the first set of stairs that we can, and there's no way down to get to the, to actually get down into the bowl. Huh. So we're like, how are people getting down here? Like, obviously, there was kind of a fence around the brim. So I'm like, are we even allowed to go down there? Or are we going to have to, to basically hop the fence and sneak into this place? So we kind of, we walked down the stairs. There's, you can see the bowl. It's huge. There's a waterfall, flowing down pretty much under our feet and flowing into the bowl. So we kind of followed the fence along, and there was a hole that was somebody had obviously dug under the fence so they could get down. So we're like, okay, this is obviously how people are getting in here. Mm-hmm. So we, squeezed all of our gear, all of our equipment and stuff into this hole, walked down there. I'm like, okay, this is going to be pretty slippery. I'm going to, go ahead and assess the situation, and, if we can get down this way, then awesome. If not, we'll find a different way. Mm-hmm. I had no intention of that being filmed. I had no intention of my camera guy, Sammy, following me, which he did without even asking. Just followed me, and that was kind of my, okay, you need to do this show full time moment. So we scaled this waterfall. I had a backpack on full of stuff, so I was like overweight. Like, I probably shouldn't have been scaling a waterfall with a backpack on. We get to the edge of it. It's still another probably 8 to 10 feet, down to the actual floor. Huge pool of water. We both kind of look at each other with this "should we jump" look. We kind of threw some rocks down that we had. It clearly wasn't deep enough to swim in, or we were probably going to be jumping into like a foot of water, which wouldn't have felt nice. Mm-hmm. So from there we sent our audio guy, JC, up, and we're like, okay, see if there's another stairwell. So he eventually finds it, and we see him, down there, so we, eventually found out how to get down there. But as soon as we got down there, it was like a whole different world. It was probably 10 to 15 degrees cooler than the surface. Thick fog, obviously, because of that temperature change. There was absolutely no mosquitoes. There was no bugs. It was completely silent. It was the weirdest thing ever. Just the location in general was just strange. And there's moments throughout the episode where we're all like, what the hell? Like, where are we in the Twilight Zone? Like, what the hell? And the only insects that were down there were just millions of fireflies, like everywhere.
Oh, really?
Everywhere we walked was just flickering, and it was still relatively hot down there. Like, it wasn't like, like I said, it was like close to 100 degrees on the surface. Mm-hmm. It was still very warm down there. Like, it was still warm and humid. It was a lot more comfortable, but it was still like we were in the jungle.
So interesting.
So we kind of found the center of the bowl. We kind of set up a trail camera, and we poured out a pile of Skittles, which we were told to leave as an offering so that way the gnomes didn't screw with our cars or hurt us. I'm serious.
Right.
So we literally poured out a pile of Skittles on the ground with a trail camera facing it so we could capture anything that, maybe came to try to take these Skittles. Nothing showed up, but the camera triggered like 10 times because the fog itself was so thick. Like, that's how thick the fog was that it caused our trail camera to trigger because of the movement of the, it blowing in the breeze. So we unintentionally split up when we started our investigation. It was me, Sammy, and Michaela went one way. JC and Patrick were supposed to follow. They said that they heard something the other way, so they kind of went after it. That, while we tracked farther into the woods and kind of followed the stream down. And in that investigation, we probably investigated for like 3 hours. We feel like we were able to have the experiences that were being reported, and we were able to logically kind of give them an explanation. There was a lot of water dripping down there, obviously, from the change in temperature. Obviously, that doesn't equate for, sightings that maybe happen in the colder months, but there were definitely times where we felt like we were being surrounded because it felt like footsteps because there was so much water dripping from the trees hitting the leaves. Some of the stories talk about light anomalies that kind of follow people around, which we kind of chalked up to being, okay, there's a lot of lightning bugs down here. That's, probably what people are seeing. Now, I kind of have to add this in here. So, from what we learned about this area, Menominee, Wisconsin is a college town. It has UW Stout.
Right.
What we learned is that a lot of kids go down to the Punch Bowl and party. So a lot of these reports are, and even Chris Wiener, the guy we interviewed, kind of said that he thinks that a lot of the sighting reports could be kind of tainted by the fact that most of the people that make them are probably under the influence when they have these experiences.
Right.
So that's kind of where it came from, where, okay, obviously there's a lot of fireflies down here. There could be kids that are drunk or high on something, seeing these and remembering, oh, there's these stories down here. That's probably what it is. And then obviously with all the water droplets and, sounding like footsteps and just the total eerie, there's a moment where my cousin Michaela's walking around and she's kind of doing like almost like a selfie cam, and she's talking about how she feels down there, and she called the location very disorienting, which it was. Just how thick the fog was. It was completely silent. Like, it was weird. The only thing that we really couldn't explain is there was a moment where I kind of chased after something because I thought I saw like a shadow moving across my light from my headlamp. Which, could have been just, the way the mist was moving. I don't know. But that was kind of the only thing that we really, had that we couldn't give like an explanation to. Everything else we felt pretty confident that we were experiencing just a natural phenomenon.
Aside from the fireflies, what other wildlife lived in and around the Devil's Punch Bowl?
If there were any, we never saw it.
Interesting.
Like, that's what I mean. There was absolutely no animals. There was no evidence of animals. There was nothing. Because we went down there totally expecting to be eaten alive by mosquitoes. Right. None. And we're in Minnesota. We get mosquitoes all the time in the summer. Like, there's no escaping it. Like, you're by water, you're getting eaten alive. There was none. There was no footprints. There was nothing, nothing suggesting that there was any wildlife activity in that area. Other than the fireflies, there was just, your occasional water bugs in the stream. That was it.
Now, earlier when we started talking about the Devil's Punch Bowl, when we first mentioned the gnomes, we kind of jokingly said the word gnomes. But I would like to establish a question here about things like gnomes in cryptozoology and, 14 things in general, because it is seemingly, at the very least, a cultural commonality between a great many cultures that there are stories and many times modern reports of these small humanoid animals or beings. We've got, in Mexico you have the duende, and in Argentina, you have Pombero and things like that.
Iceland's got the elves.
Yes, those are another very famous one. And I'd like to ask you seriously about that kind of subject because I feel perhaps maybe it's, or not maybe, perhaps we shouldn't laugh so easily at that if we're to be scientific about things.
So you want to know kind of how I feel personally about these?
Yeah, in a very serious manner. What do you think about these humanoid reports from around the world? These small humanoids.
I don't know. It's pretty wild. Like the ones that really get me is the Iceland ones, especially since it's like I think it's believed that like almost half, if not more than half, of the population believes in elves. That they actually believe that these creatures are out there, and they go out of their way to protect the land that they supposedly live on. But, that just kind of goes back to more of a cultural superstition at that point where it's nothing that's probably exists in the real world. It's just you don't mess with tradition. Because we did some work in Ireland last year.
Oh, really?
And that is what we kind of came across. And even the person that we interviewed, too, was like, they pretty much said that they grew up believing that it was called the puka, but they grew up believing that this was real. But they said that they, as an adult now and as a folklorist and as somebody that tells these stories, they don't believe that it's anything more than just a story that people grew up knowing and hearing. Because she kind of had a story of, you don't eat blackberries after a certain date because the puka has tainted them and they're not going to taste good, which we in modern society equate that to, okay, they're past, they're ripening, so they're just going to be gross and tart and not good. But they attributed that to this, this legend and this creature kind of, messing with their things, and they say, you get drunk and you're walking home from the pub and you fall over or trip. It was the puka that pushed you over. That's kind of where we approach the cultural side of things, where you're going to have these stories that are more of a boogeyman tale than any actual physical sighting.
Yeah, cultural cryptozoology is a very important aspect of it to many people, and it's really interesting that you've been able to delve into that as much as you have.
Yeah, because we try to cover every base, no matter what, if kind of going into these things, we obviously are going to have our personal speculations, like, okay, like this is probably what it's going to be, but we're still going to give it our due diligence. Like, we have to still give everything the time of day and really dive into it to better understand it, because 9 times out of 10 you're probably going to be surprised.
What makes you say that?
It's you read about stories, you read about these stories online, you kind of hear about them on TV, or you're told them by somebody else, but then once you actually put yourself in that area and you actually are really talking to the people in person that know these stories personally and have had these experiences, you kind of take a different standpoint on things. You see it differently because you have somebody physically standing in front of you that says, "Yes, I saw this. Yes, I heard this. Yes, I know it's there." It's all the stories with the Yeti in the Himalayas. Like, it's some call it more of a spiritual experience than an actual, like, oh, you just saw a 10-foot tall hominid. It's more of like a god to them than it is actually what we see it as, a unexplained animal.
That's a very interesting point.
It's different cultures around the world have different ways of describing things, and I think it's hard from people, coming from the Western civilization, to kind of understand that. That we we like things to be simple and easy to understand, whereas, somewhere else it's not going to be that simple.
Do you think the lack of simplicity there speaks to some kind of disagreement, perhaps, between more spiritual cultures and less spiritual cultures about to what level things can be spiritual? So, for instance, in like Native American mythology, for instance, you have real animals that have these very magical properties. Do you think that the idea that there is sort of a surprise to be found in that there's a real belief in there, what do you think that says for cryptozoology as an approach?
Definitely makes things interesting.
I'm sure, right.
But yeah, I think it just makes people have to ask the right questions. You can't go into these cases with any sort of expectation, because you're always going to be let down. So, whereas with, cryptozoology around here, our cases seem to be way more simple than the ones you find overseas. Where it's either a Bigfoot of some sort, a large cat that doesn't shouldn't be there, a werewolf-like creature, thunderbirds. It's either is something that is new and comes from a local community's history with something, or it's Native American. And that's that's what we get. Obviously, in other cultures in other countries, it's usually tribe specific, or monastery specific, or whatever. But when you actually sit back, collect all the evidence, and you realize all these different people are pretty much describing almost the same thing, then you can kind of look at it in that wider spectrum of, okay, there's probably something going on here. When
you look at that kind of wider spectrum and you say something's probably going on, when you say something's going on, do you mean something physical is happening, or does it sometimes occur to you that maybe there's an unknown psychological or cultural phenomenon at play?
See, when I look into things like that, where you have groups of people that are almost have no knowledge of each other, or have no knowledge of each other's customs, and they're describing that they're seeing the same thing, then that's the moment that I take a step and kind of look into the possibility of physical versus a mass hysteria. Because there's no way that, let's say I report to somebody that I saw something, you report to that same person that you saw something, and it's in our, us never meeting each other, and we describe, almost the same thing to this person, then obviously it's, it's going to kind of, especially since we live, 1,500 miles away from each other. In that instance, you kind of have to see things as, there is something either we knew about, either both places that we're from have similar legends, and that's just kind of what we attribute it to, or we actually did see the thing that we are reporting, and it's the same thing in different locations.
What do you think of places that have those same legends, even though they're separated by long distances?
Well, I mean, you have to sit back and you have to look at the cases of Sasquatch all over the world. Even to this day, I'm shocked to talk to people that don't ever take into account the fact that Sasquatch is more of a broad name, and like Bigfoot is like the specific name. And people don't think about all these different Sasquatch sightings all over the world that are almost identical. Obviously some are regionally specific, whereas you have the Yeti, which is sometimes described as either a dark brownish black, and more often than not, a white hair. You've got the Yeren in China. You've got the Yowie in Australia. You've got the Almas in Central Asia and more Siberia. You have the skunk ape in Florida, the grassman in Ohio. Obviously, the big famous one, Bigfoot in the Pacific Northwest. You've got the Mugia monster in Arizona. I can't think of the name of it. The Ucammer, which is a kind of a Bigfoot-ish case in Argentina. Like, the list goes on. And all of these people are almost describing the same exact things. It's a 8 to 10 feet tall, large hairy hominid, 13 to 15-inch feet, 5-toe, your classic, Sasquatch footprint. Obviously, you have some different variations where, you have, the, sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. The orang pendek in Sumatra, which is supposed to be shorter, more in that 5 to 6 foot tall range, but still drawing the same characteristics. And then you also have other similar cases like the orang pendek in other countries where it's shorter than your traditional Bigfoot, but still similar things. But then you have the lake monsters seen all over the world that that pretty much get branded whatever locations Loch Ness. It's everything draws back to one thing, like that main one that made it famous, and then but it's always its own thing. So it's in that realm of things. Cryptozoology just goes on and on. There's no, you can't just sit down and have a short conversation about cryptozoology.
Agreed.
It's impossible.
Agreed. Not one that's fulfilling enough anyway.
I've been doing this for 20 years. It's impossible.
So speaking of you doing this for 20 years with such these really, thought out and detailed perspectives on it, what is it that got you into doing this research seriously?
So obviously when people meet me and I say, yeah, I've been doing this for 20 years, they look at me like I'm insane because I'm 25. So, and people were like, how have you been doing this 20 years? Well, I started this first or second grade, so which would have been 2000, 2001. I don't remember specifically how I came across this stuff. I don't know if I saw it on TV or if I stumbled across it. I don't remember. I feel like I came across a book and was like, what is this? And kind of just, fell into a rabbit hole. I first started researching Loch Ness. That was my thing. Eventually came across Sasquatch, UFOs, stuff of that nature. I was checking out books from my elementary school library so frequently on these subjects that the school librarian, anytime they got in new books that were related, she would set them aside so I got first dibs. And she would let me take them longer than we were allowed to take books. So that's really how I kind of started into this. And then as shows like Monster Quest came out, which really kind of opened, obviously opened my eyes and the floodgates to other, not so known cryptids to me. And then shows like Destination Truth, which really opened, my eyes to all these other cryptid cases from every corner of the globe. That's when I was really started to take it extremely seriously. And then as I got into filmmaking and was wanting to go to film school and do all of this, I kind of decided to kind of combine my two loves and start pursuing cryptozoology. And that's kind of one of the things that led to the show being created. Definitely helped, and that's kind of how I got into all this stuff.
Now, Chasing Legends, that's been a thing you've been working on for a while, it must have been, because you said that there's been 2-year hiatuses, there's been breaks in between.
Yeah, it was May of 2013 is when we started this.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually started as a joke.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So my friend, I obviously still live here in South Central Minnesota, and that's where I've lived my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Caitlin Keeley, who I've known through the community, and we just we became really good friends and still are good friends to this day. She lived in Massachusetts at the time. Now she lives in Ireland. But I was watching that god-awful Animal Planet mockumentary about mermaids.
Oh, yes, that one, yes.
I was pretty much trying to play it off like it was a real thing, and a bunch of people actually bought into it.
Mm-hmm.
But they had brought up the Kiryat Yam Israel mermaid case, which they did an episode of Destination Truth on, so I had known about it. And they were talking about it, and they're like, yeah, there's this $1 million reward that the town of Kiryat Yam is offering as more of a tourism stunt, obviously just to bring people in. But they pretty much were saying that, hey, if you can prove without a doubt that there's a mermaid swimming in our waters, we'll give you $1 million. So, obviously, I like I said, I knew about it from the Destination Truth episode, and then they were talking about it in this mockumentary, and I was texting with Caitlin at the time, and I was kind of telling her about this movie, and I had brought up this case. I'm like, we should go to Israel, and let's bring some people, and let's document us trying to find this mermaid and win $1 million. And we're like, yeah, that sounds awesome, and we should do that. And then Caitlin and I had kind of we had moments where we had talked about trying to create a show together because we were both big into the paranormal. She knew I was into film, so she knew that I knew how to kind of take care of things that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I'd brought up, I'm like, let's film this as a documentary, but then I'm like, why do it that? Like, let's create a show. Like, what's stopping us? We should do it. Like, let's create a show that just follows us as we try to find research and investigate these legends all over the world, and let's see what comes of it. And we surprisingly both took it extremely seriously. Mm-hmm. And we were like, let's do this. So it was like within probably the first 2 weeks, we're pretty much like texting and calling each other almost every day, discussing ideas. What do we want to do? How do we want to? How do we want it to look? Who do we want to bring in? And that's obviously when I brought in my friends. I was like, I've got these guys. They'll do anything. They're ready to go. So we went into it, and I kind of came up with the name because we kind of knew that we wanted to have something with legends. So we're like legend hunters. We called it. We had a bunch of different names that we bounced around. Eventually, stumbling or landing on Chasing Legends, which we both felt was really solid. Mm-hmm. So that's what we eventually called it. And so we kind of started doing research. We kind of, started figuring out, where do we want to go? Where do we want to cover? Where do we, things of that nature. And that's what kind of led us into filming that first Hell's Tunnel episode.
Right.
And then from there, it just kind of spiraled into chaos.
So definitely the idea of going international has been with you guys since the start, really.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was... the first season that I had mapped out was almost entirely international. Mm-hmm. But we knew it wasn't going to be possible because we had no money and no studio backing, and we were like, okay, how are we going to do this? So that's kind of when we took the approach of let's just start doing some small local things and call it good. Mm-hmm. At least to establish ourselves.
Right. You've mentioned that you've been to Ireland for this type of business, though. So how was that trip being possible, so like open doors for you guys to start going elsewhere, or? That was one of our many attempts at a network pilot. Mm-hmm. And because when we created this, we kind of knew that we wanted it to go on TV. Right. Over the years, we kind of changed our standpoint on that and wanted to kind of do it more independently. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, we kind of came across this case that we'd kind of always known about, obviously, because Caitlin is from there, had family there, kind of knew it from family, and so we were like, okay, let's get some money together. So the four of us went. It was myself, Sammy, JC, our audio guy, and my girlfriend Abby went, and we met with Caitlin.
What was that planned to be a Chasing Legends episode?
Yeah, because like I said, that was going to be one of our attempts at kind of creating something that we would attempt to shop to networks. Eventually, we kind of, like I said, we kind of changed that to wanting to go more of an indie route. But yes, that was originally supposed to be an episode we were going to put out, but it was just we kind of rushed into it because I'm like, okay, we have this money, let's go international. Ireland, it is, it'd be easy. We have somebody there that has, all these connections and it'll be easy. We just got to show up and film. Well, it turned into a nightmare, and we had interviews lined up that ended up canceling, and we had a local crew that was supposed to help us that, completely ghosted us. It's that all these things kind of happen. So we kind of flipped it. We did film, but we kind of flipped it into more of just like a research trip. And so like the one person that we did interview was, really good and, had all the kind of the know-how on it, and kind of felt that it wasn't anything really physical and more of just that story. We had a pretty good investigation. But yeah, it was supposed to be an episode.
Right.
And that's kind of there. We've kind of filmed a few over the years that have we've filmed, edited. I'll kind of look at it, and if it doesn't feel right to me as an episode, I will just kind of set it aside. And that was one that hurt a lot to set aside because it was, there was so much invested into that episode.
What
but
other?
It was.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
But it was a really good learning experience because it taught us what not to do. And so essentially, from now on with the stuff we have planned coming up, we make sure that we have interviews locked. And we have a verbal written agreement that they're going to be there and show up. And we make sure that we have everything laid out before we even bought tickets. So that way we're not screwing ourselves over when we get there and we have nothing to do. So we kind of looked at it as as a pretty good learning experience. And it was just a really great experience in general because we saw the weather was beautiful. It only rained once for 5 minutes, which is pretty crazy for Ireland. So we got a really nice tour of the country, and we filmed a lot of stuff that we can look back at later on, and just remember that trip that we had as friends. And
was there any material that you had on your investigation there that, even though it hasn't made the cut, might be of interest to the field?
Not really. Because like I said, it was one of those things where we were probably just fumbling in the dark for no reason. We still went into it with, zero expectations, so we really weren't let down. I had no, expectations whatsoever, because pretty much the lady that we interviewed told us that they'll present themselves to you if they want to. So we kind of went into the area that she suggested, and we didn't have anything that was there was no animals out there. We didn't even have anything that we could have, chalked up to a misidentification. It was just pretty much just us walking around the woods for 3 hours.
Right. But you have mentioned that there have been other places you've gone to that haven't really made the cut yet either.
Yeah.
What were those places like, if you can talk about them?
So in early 2015, we did a werewolf episode in Wisconsin, and we kind of focused it on like the Beast of Bray Road, which we shouldn't have, because like Bray Road is just a road. Like there's nothing to investigate. There's nowhere to investigate because it's all like private property. So we kind of focused our investigation on another forest that was supposed to have a lot of sightings and encounters.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have anything in the werewolf realm of things, but we had probably my first and only like real Bigfoot encounter, which was crazy because we were there for something completely different.
I would love to hear more about that.
So it was like middle of February, eastern Wisconsin. It was like negative 25. My crew hated me, but I'm like, we don't take breaks because of the weather, and it was before we had just pulled up, to this little parking area near this forest that we were going to do our investigation. One of my camera guys was filming some B-roll of the moon at the time, as it was a full moon that night, perfectly. And it was myself and one of my other team members at the time we had just stepped out of the car. He was smoking a cigarette, and I was just kind of standing there. We were chatting. So nothing was really rolling at that time. And out of this forest, we heard the coveted 3 hollow knocks come out of the forest. And both me and my teammate Josh Hurd, we both stop, slowly look at each other, and we're just like, dude, like what the hell? Because it's like, it's like I said, it's negative 25. Nobody is running around the woods in the middle of February in that weather,
right? Just
banging on trees. And we shared this information with another person in the area that we knew, and they're like, yeah, that stuff happens all the time.
Interesting.
And so we're like, okay, after that, we kind of went into the investigation, like, okay, we're here looking for werewolf-like creatures, but let's try some I use the term, with vomit in my mouth, squatching tactics. And we tried doing the tree knocking back. We tried the finding Bigfoot calls, and didn't have anything obviously respond. Didn't have any werewolf encounters. We came across some like pretty big like footprints in the snow, but they were, as we kind of dug into the snow and got down to the ground level, they were horse footprints. So really had nothing that actually went along with the episode. We kind of wandered around the town that day and interviewed like townspeople, and they all like wanted nothing to, because we were in the town of Elkhorn, Wisconsin, which is where Bray Road is at.
Right.
And most of the townspeople wanted like nothing to do with it. Like
really?
Nobody wanted to talk with us. They, because they kind of got in on the legend when it happened, but then they made a movie about it, and it was just awful, and they made it seem like it was just the scariest thing to come out of Wisconsin. And when you've got like Ed Gein in them,
right?
And so then after that movie came out, the townspeople were kind of like, okay, we want nothing to do with this. So as we're walking around like, hey, we're filming a documentary on the Bray Road, they pretty much, politely told us, to fuck off. And, we talked to one guy who said that he thought all of the werewolf and Bray Road story was bullshit, but he believed that there were Sasquatch in the area. We talked to a guy that said that he had heard a story from somebody that he that was like about how the Bray Road story got started and how it was completely blown out of proportion. And so that was kind of the only like notable person that we kind of talked to that had anything good to say. Mm-hmm. Everyone else kind of like pointed us in the direction of Sasquatch and, didn't want to talk about anything else. Mm-hmm. So with all of that, that was kind of what buried that episode was, okay, it's kind of going 8 different directions at this point. So
right.
There was no way I could edit around all that to make it make sense.
As someone investigating this phenomenon, what is that kind of revelation as you go there and you're talking and everything seems off subject as to what it's perhaps predisposed to being? What does that say to you?
That, like most things in the paranormal field, there's a commercial side and there's a real side, mm-hmm. I guess I can use. There's that side of things where, something happened 60 years ago and they're just trying to make a quick buck off of it. And there's that side of things that, something happened 60 years ago and they're really trying to keep it genuine and alive and bring people in and educate them on it. Mm-hmm. I've come across both of those things, in my career tons of times. I've more so found the genuine side of it where they're in it for the actual legend itself and, don't want any money, or if they, maybe they're selling some t-shirts or whatever, nothing like crazy, mm-hmm. They're not selling, tours to, see where this creature was sighted, and they're not selling, all these, knickknacks and all that.
Right.
But I have come across the ones where they are. Like, mm-hmm. they are definitely marketing this creature.
Right.
Lake Pepin is kind of one that they had both. They definitely wanted to educate people on it, but they were definitely using it as like a poster child. Mm-hmm. But they didn't have like a statue of the creature. They had like one shop that was selling like, a t-shirt and a stuffed animal. Like right. Nothing outlandish. That was it. They had a reward out there for the creature that, could be more so a tourism stunt, but I don't feel like they needed to offer a reward for a tourism stunt because the area that this, the town of Lake City is like one of the probably nicest lake towns in Minnesota, in mm-hmm. my opinion. They didn't need the extra commercialism to get people to come there because people were already coming there. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. It's tough when you kind of get people that, I understand it. Like there's people that just want to live their lives and live in these areas that this stuff happens, and they don't want to entertain it. Mm-hmm. But then, yeah, you get those people that do want to keep it alive and really tell the story and educate people, and that's kind of why you start seeing these little festivals pop up everywhere that are being held by, someone you've never heard of that, is from the town that just wants to educate people on the stories and, kind of help the town grow with it.
Mm-hmm. What other phenomenon have you looked into that never made the cut?
Trying to think. None. We've shot 2 episodes on. We did, obviously, like I said, we did the Beasterberg Road one, and then we shot one last April that was more like Dogman specific. Mm-hmm. That one we had a lot of crazy stuff happen, but we were so like cramped for time that we weren't able to film anything that actually tied anything together. So that's why that one didn't work out. Everything else with it went fine. A bunch of our interviews got moved around, so we were pretty much trying to be 3 places at once. So that's why that one kind of failed as a episode out there. Because, I mean, that was the one that we probably had our best physical evidence ever documented and captured.
What was the evidence, if you can say?
We found a canine footprint the size of my hand. And not just one, we found a consecutive walking pattern. We cast it, and I have it sitting on my desk.
Really? Wow. What's the story behind finding those prints?
We had just started our investigation. It was still daylight. We were walking into this forest where everyone that we talked to pretty much recommended that we go. So, the sun was still setting. We're walking in. We're going to find a place to set up a base camp. And, then we would, move out from there and into our investigation. So we really didn't have much for cameras rolling. We weren't even prepared. I think Sammy was recording, but he was just kind of filming, random things. He wasn't filming anything specific because we weren't, quote unquote, working at that point in time. And we were just kind of walking along this mud path, and Michaela happened to look down, and she's like, guys. And I turned around, and, I kind of stepped forward and looked down, and there was this huge, canine, it was definitely canine, wasn't feline, footprint in the mud, deep in the mud, so obviously something of weight. And we found several other, prints that were kind of in line with each other. Found other prints that were probably from a different creature, or I shouldn't say a different creature, but wasn't the same one that left the prints that we had originally found. So there was probably about a 5-minute moment of high fives and holy shit, what did we just find? I
can imagine.
And then we're like, okay, let's cast this. I think I remember at one point I looked at Michaela and I'm like, we finally get to use our evidence kit that we've carried around for 5 years. And, so we busted the shocking powder, read the directions, we poured the cast, we put a marker there so we can remember it. We're like, okay, we gotta get out there, we gotta try and find stuff. So we kind of kept moving through the forest, we kept finding these footprints, we found more of them, well away from where the cast was sitting. Wandered around the woods for a couple hours, didn't really have anything, crazy. But we kind of felt like, okay, we have this footprint that's close to enough, that should be enough to kind of close the lid on, or close the book on this case. So, we went back, we collected it, we got back to the hotel, I cleaned it off, sent pictures of it to some people. We were supposed to have it analyzed by the Minnesota Zoo here, but the contact that I had there didn't get back to me, so we never got it actually examined.
Right.
I was at a festival in this last September and showed it to some people that live in that area that, or have been investigating that stuff for quite some time, and they thought it was the greatest thing they'd ever seen. And these are people that live there and actively, on a weekly basis go out and look for this stuff.
Right.
And they had never come across, tracks of this size.
What a sizable find that is. Yeah.
So, just showing them and getting that reaction from them was, validation enough. And it's, we pretty much said, this would just be a nice mantelpiece to have, and a nice story to tell. We're not going to put it out there. We still plan on using some of the footage for, promo stuff. But it won't ever be a full episode, unfortunately.
Right. Well, speaking of promo stuff and everything that makes Chasing Legends what it is, where does Chasing Legends stand right now?
We have a pretty pretty full plate over the next year and a half. March 6th, we fly out to Massachusetts to film an episode. And then from that one, we plan on filming over the next, like I said, year and a half, filming 4 to 5 more that we will put together as our first proper full season 1 of Chasing Legends.
And is that the foreseeable future for Chasing Legends right there?
Yes. One way or another, we'll be making this season 1 happen. Whether it happens in that time frame is yet to be seen. I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that everybody on the team is ready to go and is excited for it. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. We have a lot of. I just released our new website. I shouldn't say new. It's newly updated website. So new stuff's going to start coming out and popping up. New promos, new stuff. It's going to start coming up in the next couple months from us. I will obviously be sharing pictures from our next episode shoot here in March once we're out there. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be a fantastic journey that you guys go on for this.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, but I feel personally that taking this long to kind of get to where we are and what we're about to do, I feel like we needed all of that time because I feel like we're very refined now as both filmmakers and researchers, investigators, to kind of do this right and make it look really good. Whereas, years ago when we started this, everything was new. We were figuring out everything as we went. Whereas now we've had all of that, those episodes that will never see the light of day, and we've had all those learning experiences, and we've met tons of great people in the field that have encouraged us and cheered us on and have pointed us in the right direction and have really helped us kind of refine what this show is about to be. So it's going to be wild. One way or another, whether this season releases in 2021 like I want to, or if it kind of gets pushed back a bit, it's one way or another it's coming out. And I'm going to make sure that these 5 or 6 episodes in this first season are some of the craziest stuff that we've ever done, and will definitely be a good framework for what we will do after that.
Sounds spectacular. I'll make sure to keep updated on your progress.
Yes, I will make sure to update you as well. A little behind the scenes stuff.
Sounds good. I recommend everyone watch the pilot episodes that are on Chasing Legends website right now. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Nash?
Nothing yet.
All right. Well, thank you.
Just head out and check out the new website, ChasingLegendsCrew.com, and you'll be able to find all of the proper links to YouTube, Facebook, Instagram from there. I'm going to be adding new stuff to the website, like I said, over the next couple months as we kind of make new promo material and new promo images and videos and stuff like that. But yeah, that's where everything's going to be. It's the one-stop shop.
Sounds fantastic. Nash, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem at all. I hope you have a good one.
Yeah, you too.